bit. Overall, I'd say that we're probably going to, as the reprioritisation of some schemes occurs, and also it's true to say as some of the schemes need alternative funding solutions, there's going to be a little bit of a gap, and I think we're going to feel that certainly in the supply chain before some of those projects come out of consultancy, get into contracting. So probably we're going to see things pick up again back into 2016. That's really an overall feeling.
So it couples together with the oil prices as well.
That's definitely true. And, I think straight after the price went off the edge, so to speak, there was the media were full of questions. Well, is that going to have any effect? Is it going to have any effect? It's going to have a huge effect. It's you're virtually halving the price of the prime commodity, and so the way that channels down is there's certainly less surplus than the region used to enjoy. So you start having to draw on reserves, and just in the same way as every one of us gets a little bit more careful when you've got to start thinking about using savings. So governments are more careful when they think about reserves, and so that tends to affect funding priorities. I think one thing, though, has to be absolutely clear: a considerable part of the rest of the world is very used to borrowing large amounts of funding to get their investments off the ground, and the region still enjoys a high degree of reserves, and is absolutely in a much better position than many of the European nations. So I think that's also a key point to make.
Asim?
Yeah, I think I would echo most of what Chris said. I think if you look at the individual markets within the Middle East, each one has a different dynamic to it. Countries like Saudi Arabia remain very buoyant because the inherent need for social infrastructure projects remain. They have large populations, and the government needs to build for that for the future. And I think they remain committed to doing that. So the reprioritization that Chris referred to is taking place, perhaps, where maybe they're moving the investment into the social sectors a little more than they have in the past. The UAE, I think, is probably the most mature of the region's markets. It's more diversified. It's perhaps less affected by the drop in oil prices as compared to the other countries. And then you have the impact of the events that are committed to for the next few years. I think those remain on the horizon, and therefore the construction that is associated with the Expo here, for instance, or the Qatar 2022 will continue, and the investment needs to be made in those, because that's a commitment that the governments have made to the world as a whole. There are certain parts of the, I would say, economy that are also affected in a different way by the changing economic conditions. I would put tourism in that category. Exchange rates fluctuations affect how people spend their money, and with the UAE and the Gulf currencies largely linked to the US dollar, that has an impact on which countries are able to come here and spend their dollars. I would say that the UAE has been very pragmatic in identifying tourism as a sector that can be sustainable, as a sustainable pillar of the economy going forward. So overall, I would say, yes, there are challenges, but the governments of the region are alert to it and have been doing everything they can to mitigate the negative impacts of the oil price decline.
Okay. Great. David?
Hi, yeah. I'm sort of getting the feeling that the world is normalising a little bit for the time being.
I'm not sure I can hear you. Let's go with that.
Hi. Yeah, I'm sort of getting the feeling that we're sort of normalising ourselves a little bit, as Chris alluded to. If we get a bit tight, we start to cut back. You look on a regional basis, we've got Saudis looking a little bit more around the concept of the alternative funding. It doesn't have a very good legal model way to be able to drive through the likes of the very well. The Medina airport was one exception to this rule they're going through TAFE. GATT seems to be able to generate itself as a law unto itself. But some of the challenges with this alternative funding right now is that we've got the burns on the current account, so it's spent 10 to 12% of its surplus, but it was stored in local banks. If it's taken out and spent somewhere else, the bank doesn't have the liquidity. So I think there's a realisation, for instance, in Saudi, for instance, we need to start changing the master-slave opinion, their way of contracting to a little bit more collaborative, because ultimately liquidity worldwide will take the path of least resistance and highest return, and historically Saudis not provided. UAE, especially in Dubai, the enactment of PPP law, well, that's turning out to be a bit of a bonus, I suspect, on an international stage. So I can see some of the government critical related projects, the education project springs to mind as now having a little more legs potentially, or some of the schemes that are around that. But we have seen a decline, and I don't think next year will be much easier. I think most people expect Saudi to have a pretty significant eat into its budget. I think in the midterm they'll still go forward, but I don't think they'll go forward with everything at the same time, which seems to be the attitude in recent years with high oil prices. But then I come from the UK, I wouldn't expect to build high-speed rail 2, 3 and Crossrail 2 all at the same time and put third runway at Heathrow. I'd expect them to have a sensible phasing structure. So there might be a bit of normality returning to the feast.
Yeah. Great.
Yes. I believe there is a slowdown definitely in the construction industry, but first of all, this is not spread on all sectors. I see that there will be some kind of more concentration of projects that will take priority, social infrastructure, maybe schools, universities, training, and other governmental buildings. And there might be in the future some kind of more concentration also on maybe the not so lavish, maybe I say that, I don't say the low cost, maybe toward the low cost of residential buildings and other buildings. On the other hand, I want to mention that even with all disasters that are man-made, that are naturally or man-made due to any destruction that we see or any political conflicts, this is somehow we have to see also a kind of bright maybe side of it. This has to be rebuilt somehow, and I feel very soon what we see destructed is going to be rebuilt, and there is a great potential for everybody to contribute to that, and there will be a big, maybe a change and big boom in the future for the sheer fact of what we see. Without destruction, we need more structures. With this, we need more. So in the future, the role of the construction industry is very important, and the slowdown now is only temporary. Regardless of oil prices, the boom is coming for construction, especially in the region.
Yes, I resonate the view of Professor. I entirely agree with you.
Yes.
But one thing which is there, that whatsoever is happening, it will have a very different kind of development altogether. And what I feel that development will be at the bottom of the pyramid. The opportunities at the bottom of the pyramid. The needs are at the bottom of the pyramid. Right now, the entire focus of development is at the market buildings, at the much, much larger buildings, the new buildings. And the attitude all across us is that we want to have the best. Generally, the best has not the answer. The answer is the optimum. Optimum could be different at the different point of time, different region, different place, different places. And it has to be defined. It will come with the integration of the things. One of the prime examples which I would like to quote is hospitals. In hospital, if you have to optimize the cost, because if it is too expensive, it becomes unaffordable. The best medicine cannot be affordable. So it cannot be affordable to the large mass of the people. So when you are talking of optimum, you are talking of balancing the environment quality with the energy usage. How do we do that? And that is defining the problem very precisely, setting our objectives very clearly. Instead of going haphazardly, we have to, and that is the way the tools which are developing, it will be more focused, like you are talking of a laser beam instead of plasma cutting or instead of gas cutting. All the three cuts the things. The gas cutting will take 20 times more energy, plasma will take 1/10, and laser will just take 1. And this is the way probably the world is going to develop further.
Okay.
I think the answer to the question how the market has changed since 2014 is clearly down. if we're going to look at how it's going to develop over the next couple of years, I think we're going to see a soft landing. So I don't think we're going to see a crash. I'm talking about now about prices and values and rents. So obviously that's going to impact on what it means for the construction activity. But over the last few years, we've seen far too much construction. We've seen far too much development going on. And it's actually a good thing now we're seeing a bit of normality in the market. So I think my two key words will be normality, which I think Chris has already picked up on, and the other one will be focus. I think we're going to see more focus on fewer projects, and I think that focus will be in 4 areas. I think the 4 areas where the projects are likely to go ahead more quickly than others. One will be around events, and we'll talk about that in a minute, whether it's Expo 2020 or whether it's FIFA 2022 or whatever it might be, but there'll be an events focus. The second focus, I think, will be on social infrastructure, and I see great opportunities in hospitals and in education. I think they are areas that this part of the world desperately needs more of. So my second focus would be on social infrastructure. The third focus will be on middle-income housing. Affordability, I think, is critical in this part of the world, and I'd like to talk a bit more about that when we come back in more detailed questions. So number 3, affordability and middle income. And the fourth one will obviously be around defence and security. And obviously that's an important consideration in this part of the world. We may have a new norm, but I think we still have security and defence issues. So they will be my 4 focuses: events, security, middle income housing, and social infrastructure.
Thank you. So we're going to go back to the other side over here, and we're going to pick the first one of that, and I'm going to expand upon it a little bit, and that is the events, and say mega events like Expo 2020 and the World Cup. How have these balanced with the reduction of what's in the pipeline, right, or maybe the expansion of what's in the pipeline because things are being put on hold? How have these countered the reduced capacity that comes along with reduced oil prices? And then also, how have they affected the needs for the transportation infrastructure that goes along with it?
I think this is a good question, Lee. But is this working, by the way?
Yeah.
Here we go. Before the decline in the oil price, the combination of the planned projects, planned development projects, and the event-related development was potentially causing a significant amount of stress on the system. And whilst the UAE enjoyed probably the most sophisticated procurement environment in the Middle East, it certainly was not going to be immune to increase in inflation, scarcity of materials, labour, and that sort of thing. That was what we were really heading to. There were massive programs in Qatar and also in KSA as well, to name a few, Kuwait included in that. The way the market has, using that word, has normalised, it has certainly reduced the speed of a number of those development projects, meaning that there is now probably more available capacity for the event-related projects and development. So what we're probably going to see is greater certainty around those projects and probably better value for money at the end of the day. We've all been informed that they're pretty much pre-funded, so as far as that's concerned, the money's there waiting to go ahead. And so really we're seeing that with a more normal market, we're actually seeing quite a good outlook as far as it's concerned. They're what we call the imperatives of each of those nations. How have they affected the transportation? Generally speaking, they're all part of the same package. The FIFA 22 and Expo 2020 are focused around creating mobility for visitors to those sites. That's really the fundamental. In a way, the rest of it is easy. And so the positive legacy of the investment is that in helping the events deliver on their vision, we're also creating a sustainable infrastructure for each one of those nations. And I think that's really key. So in a way, this normalisation could be seen as good news. We're going to get good quality and good economic quality for the event, and also we should be left with a legacy, which is actually a fundamental use to to those nations.
Great. Let me pick up on the transport side of things. That remains the single biggest investment that you have to make for the different events. If you look at the expo itself, I think just today there was an announcement of some budgets, and of the total budget of 20 plus billion, nearly half is allocated to transport, which includes the extension of the bi-metro. And when such a big investment is made, the key is to make sure that it's not just a one-off that that investment is going to serve, that there is planning for the legacy usage of the site. And when you look at how the metro in Dubai is being planned, the route actually serves a lot of current and future developments that will continue to be drivers of ridership even after the expo itself. So I think that is key. In the past there have been, I think, complaints that planning has not been as good as it needs to be. Lessons have been learned from that. A lot of effort has gone in. I think what's helped is that the events that we're talking about were awarded 7, 8 years, 9 years ahead of them being actually them taking place. So that has allowed the authorities to spend the first, I would say, 3 or 4 years planning, designing, and now you're seeing the construction really start, particularly with the expo. So I think there's been a good effort that's gone into it, and the quality of that infrastructure, I think, will be such that it serves the countries for many years to come, even beyond the events.
I've got to say, I think the big winner out of this was really Qatar. It was never really going to cause too much of an issue to its current deficit or surplus running Q22 with such a small population and such a large gas reserve. And so, bizarrely, the rich get richer and poor get poorer is often the expression that's used, but they've got, I'm going to harp on Chris's point, that they're going to get better value in the procurement process. When it comes to Expo, the government commitment to it is actually relatively limited in terms of funding. It's what sits all around that, by comparison to what it's looking to drive. We get onto transport, the biggest thing that happens around Dubai itself is the airport, which, regardless of anything, Emirates keeps growing. It's got A380s arriving far too often, and will continue, and it's continued on its path. So you'd argue that actually Emirates is driving by itself, not the other way around. So the Expo is a speck on the horizon by comparison. But I do take the point saying the transport infrastructure that goes in there is a big boon if you are a resident of Dubai as we look to grow the city over the forthcoming years. And I still go back to the fact that the PPP enactment has occurred is a fantastic result, especially for the likes of the RTA. We're looking at a transport-orientated development with Union Station at this moment in time. So I think that with the ease of international investors and bank and non-bank funders, we can probably see that quite a lot of these projects have got wheels on them over the coming years, whereas it's possibly not the case at the moment in Saudi, although since they've just enacted the new PMO rule free to try and improve transparency, governance, by good advising lens, we might see that market start to open a little bit, but I just think that might be a sort of mid-term horizon for alternative funding models. And it's not part of the event's question anyway. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
In fact, with regard to the mega events, especially I'm talking about the Expo 2020 and the FIBA 2022, I see them as having these mega events 3 components. The first component is the core structures that are must have the transports for that, and also the third component is the peripherals, or maybe the other structures and other maybe economical development that come as byproducts for that. For each component, I see the slowdown can affect each component differently. For the first one, for the core structure, for the main component, this is the main one, there will be some kind of a chance to improve in the process itself. There will be more efficient designs, maybe When you have less resources, you become more innovative, you become more efficient. So I see there will be a benefit here for maybe so the natural selection of better maybe designers, better processes to be there for the first one. For the second one, also it will be in the same category here, any, but at the same time, the second one, maybe the transport and so on, will be concentrating of the legacy of this. I agree with my friend from ECO. Yes, they will see this as a long-term investment. It's a chance to improve on the transport system, airports, maybe. For the third component, will be more affected by slowing down. I believe there will be less of the expected maybe boom in the residential, maybe, and the kind of peripherals for that. They will be more effective in a way that will be cutting into the volume. But the first two will be basically better processing, better design, better selected for that, being more innovative or more efficient, and making it as much as possible to be for the legacy of maybe the two countries and maybe the region.
So again, I have to second the thoughts on that, or I would rather expand the things. Basically, what we are talking about in any development, it is integration and harmony. That brings the things together. That brings down the wastages together. That I would put it like this: that this is an opportunity. The way we had been going, the way entire society was going, this I could call as high caloric fast food mentality. With the kind of leaning down, it will also lean down the wastages, and there is a very likelihood to get a clear focus, addressed towards the low demand on the energy and the wastefulness, and it will be focused. Because basically the invention is the mother of need. Like until unless the need is not there, people will not invent. Now there are lots of opportunities which have been on the drawing boards or in the things probably come out, and I'm very much associated with the air conditioning industry, and I feel that will be a not implemented. It has to be a revolutionary change in the entire industry, and I feel that we have the science and technology available with us, which would unleash itself, and it will give an opportunity to break the established norms.
Right.
Mega events have a major impact on real estate markets, and as a real estate consultant and also a sports fan, I'm very pleased about that because it's given me the chance to visit Sydney and Beijing and London to look at the Olympic Games. And in each of those cities, the Olympics has had a huge impact on the real estate market. I'd expect the same thing to happen in Dubai with Expo 2020. I've got to declare interest that JLL were the actual real estate advisors for the Expo 2020 bid. So we did a lot of work looking at this. And there's been a lot of talk about legacy. And yes, of course, the most important thing is the legacy that you build up, not just the transport legacy, but also the other legacy, whether it's other forms of infrastructure, whether it's moving this exhibition centre out to Jebel Ali, whether there's lots of other forms of legacy we'll find, which will benefit the city. We've got the theme parks and we've got the hotels now being built out there as well. So there'll be lots of not just transport, but there'll be lots of other legacy as well. So I think that's the key to the success of turning Expo 2020 from just an event into having an impact on Dubai. I just want to echo what I think it was David said. Expo 2020 site is only 5% of what we used to call DWC, or is now being called Dubai South. It's 5% of the land area of that area. It's much more important to see what goes on in the airport, what goes on in the whole new city. Expo 2020 really is just a trigger for that. It's only a one-off event. It's only 5% of the land area. The whole area is much more than Expo.
I agree. That's an interesting way to look at it, flipping it in a sense. So, all right, Craig, we're going to stick with you and then go the other direction for a change. All right, so that's because I'm going to pick up on one of your other 4 points, and that is the opportunities that come about in terms of social infrastructure, the needs for lower and middle income housing, and the associated schools and hospitals and government facilities and so on that go along with the societal needs that come with it.
Thanks. And I think this is one thing that we're passionate about at JLL at the moment is the housing sector in the Middle East generally, but also in Dubai particularly, has been very focused on the luxury and upmarket end, and there's not been enough affordable housing. So some of you may have already seen this, but this is a report we published at Cityscape in September last year. This is available on our website, just at jll.com. Basically what we did is we tried to quantify the amount of affordable housing in the region, in different countries in the region. So we looked at Saudi, we looked at the UAE, we looked at Egypt as well. And within the UAE, we defined affordable as, interestingly enough, between up to 40% of all the households in the UAE earn between 10 and 30,000 dirhams a month. So 40% of households can afford to spend 40% of households in this country earn less than 30,000 dirhams a month. If you then assume that a household should spend 30% of that income on housing, and global standards would suggest that you shouldn't really be spending more than 30% of your income on housing, what that means is that a household can afford a budget of up to about 73,000 dirhams a year to rent, or about 800,000 dirhams to buy a house. So what we've defined, we're defining that as middle income or affordable housing, 800,000 to buy and 73,000 per annum to rent. And if you actually look at the supply of housing that fits into that category, it's been less than 20%. So 20% of all the houses that have been built or launched in Dubai over the last year or 2 years have been affordable. So 80% of the housing, by definition, is not affordable to 40% of the population. So we think that's a challenge. We think that's a problem. There are some maps in this report which show the locations of where the affordable houses are, both to rent and to buy. So I'd encourage you to have a look at that. But just remember that figure, about 20% of all the households, all the dwellings that have been delivered are affordable to 40% of the population. So just to do the math, there's a big gap there. It's interesting now that the government is recognising that, there are challenges and they need to develop more affordable housing priced at between 600, 700, 800,000 for a 2-bedroom unit. We're not talking about a studio apartment for 800,000, we're talking about a 2-bedroom unit. So if we talk at 2-bedroom units for 800,000, that I think is a great opportunity for the construction industry. And I'll throw this challenge out to the panel because most of the panel are construction people. The 3 reasons why there hasn't been enough affordable housing: one is the price of land, second is that the construction costs are too high, and the third one is a problem for the finance industry, people that haven't been giving mortgages. So we've got no finances here, but it would be interesting to get the panel's view on the cost of construction and what could be done to reduce the cost of construction to make housing more affordable.
But this question itself, I would like to address why the houses are not affordable. One of the reasons of I'm working as a building consultant and commission agent, that there is no clear focus at what the owner wants to do it. And at times when the focus is not there, I call it the AK-47 technology. You hit so many bullets thinking that someone will hit it. So most of the design by its own nature, which is obvious, it is not participative design. When you participate in the participative design, more than one thing puts out more than one purpose. In fact, if you consider the only species in this universe which creates waste is human being. The rest of the species, everything gets recycled, or it is multiple usage. So basically, what we have to look for the opportunities of multiple usage, integrating it through integration, through participative working together. Right now,